ACC PM, the man himself, Mark Packer, joins us on the Adam Gold Show. Should we talk the women's tournament since we have a whole lot more teams left in it? What do we do here, Mark?
I tweeted, or whatever they call it these days, how weird was it on Saturday, Adam? You and like me, we've been around this stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
But you get to a Saturday of really the 4 cool days of college sports history, right? That Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the NCAA tournament. But for all of us that grew up ACC fans, that entire Saturday, not a single ACC team or game to be found on the men's side. And my wife and I went and saw a movie. I read some books. I got caught up on taxes. I'm thinking, this is how the rest of the world used to operate when we got so just fat and happy and sassy during the March Madness. But it is a different year, a different time, and the transition that the ACC men are going through right now is really kind of interesting to have a front row seat to just watch all of this. But despite that, Duke still with a golden opportunity to get to the Final Four and perhaps win another national title. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, they might be. I think they are the best team. I don't know that it doesn't guarantee anything because the tournament is the tournament. You can lose. I mean, Duke could lose to Arizona. We got Caleb Love. Maybe ACC fans can live vicariously through Arizona and Caleb Love. Do you have a working theory as to why this was such a weird and difficult year for the league?
Well, I think it always starts at the top, right? I mean, it starts with coaches, and we have been so blessed and spoiled with not just great coaches, but all-time great Hall of Fame coaches. And I think it's a combination of maybe a perfect storm where, the retirement of that long list, and it goes longer than one hand, and then you got to find the replacement. We got name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, or schools spending enough money to keep guys in place. I mean, really, it's a combination, I think, of a lot of things. But for the ACC, these hires coming up, and of course you're going to have a press conference in Raleigh with Will Wade,
right? A
critical hire for not only NC State but also the league. Ryan Odom today at the University of Virginia. We'll see what happens with the changes at Miami and Florida State, respectively. Duke and Carolina have to be good. Pat Kelsey's got it going on at Louisville. Syracuse needs to wake up and get with the motion. So, I mean, listen, the foundation is always going to be set for good basketball in this league. Now, the league needs to spend some cash, and that's what you're doing in the SEC and the Big Ten and even in the Big 12. I mean, listen, they got 4 teams in the Sweet 16. I do think it should be noted that of the 4 teams that they've got in the Sweet 16, Houston, Arizona, and BYU are 3 of the new additions. So, so it's a combination, Adam, I think, of a lot of things. But quite frankly, the next wave of hires in the ACC are more than just critical. I've been saying this for a while. The ACC, for whatever reason,
Jim Larrañaga was a great hire at Miami, and we saw what happened. We hope Jay Lucas will do the same thing down there that Jim Larrañaga did. Tony Bennett at Virginia elevated that program beyond where it had ever been, even under Terry Holland. Good for him. Now Ryan Odom needs to take it the next step. They needed to get back to that in Louisville. We do need Syracuse to be, a national power again, like they were under Jim Boeheim. But here's what's interesting to me, because I think you hit on it, and I've talked about this. The SEC was willing to do things that the ACC normally is not willing to do. Now, maybe NC State and hiring Will Wade says that, all right, past transgressions aside, is this guy a great basketball coach? Chris Beard left Texas under a cloud. He's at Ole Miss. Bruce Pearl left Tennessee under a cloud. He's at Auburn. I'm not saying Nate Oates left under a cloud. He's an incredible basketball coach. So identify great coaching and pay them and cultivate that program so they can win. It certainly helps to have SEC pockets to be able to pay these coaches. But the ACC for years there's no way there's a school in the league that would hire Bruce Pearl. But he's a great basketball coach.
Yep, 100% right. And listen, and again, I know you're sitting there in Raleigh. Will Wade can coach.
Yeah.
And anybody that has followed his career from an X and O standpoint, the dude knows what he's doing. And I thought he did a great job against Brad Brownell in the first round of the NCAA tournament, given what his combination of talent was versus what Brownell had. The guy can X and O. And listen, the landscape has changed. I mean, all the stuff that Will Wade was accused of doing at LSU. Today, that's the norm. That's business as usual now.
Right.
So the world has changed. And so, the league, from our perspective, growing up in it, it needs to adapt, or else you're going to get lapped. And this particular year, the ACC got absolutely steamrolled. Just look at the numbers against the SEC. They had a losing record against the Big 12, the Big 10. I mean, go down the whole list. I mean, this is not one of those things that we should be stunned and like, man, where did this happen? It's been going on now for the last couple of years. But the world has changed. So the league's going to have to adapt, and I think it will. Again, I think some pieces are in place already where a couple of years down the road, we'll look back at this particular year going, boy, 24-25 was such a downer. But in some respects, it may be the best thing that happened in the league, kind of a wake-up call. So, again, ball is in our court, if you will, and now the league has to adapt and respond, and I think it will.
All right, Mark Packer, a couple of more minutes before we let you go, ACC PM. All right, the Tarheels. They're saying, well, we did this all year. We're sleepy starts, blah, blah, blah. Isn't it fair to say that they were a flawed roster and ultimately, to me, they didn't belong in the field? That's fine. I'm glad they got in because I knew they were good enough to win games. They weren't good enough to beat Ole Miss, obviously, on Friday, but they just weren't good enough.
That's right. I mean, really, cut right to the chase. That's exactly correct. They were flawed. When they gave you an A effort like they did against San Diego State, you watched them, you said, well, they can play with anybody. But the problem was they had too many Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, I've watched that movie from Carolina this year where, hey, we're sound asleep in the first half. Now we're in the mood. Let's go play hard in the second half and we lose a tough game. I mean, it seemed like we saw that game a dozen times this year. But, again, like I just said about the league adapting, with all the tradition and history that North Carolina basketball has, and Hubert Davis knows hoops, they now have to respond in today's world of college sports. And now getting a GM and whatever they're going to earmark with NIL, listen, all you got to do is walk into Smith Center, look up, you say, hey, they get it here from a basketball perspective. Now they got to go get players. And when you watch the 16 teams that are left, those teams look like they're playing at a different level than what we've been accustomed to watching in the ACC for the last couple of years. So that's got to change. And if it doesn't, then what we watched this past year will become the norm. But if I'm a betting man, I think the ACC will adapt and get better. That'd be my guess.
I think they will as well. All right, real quick. Cooper Flagg reminds you of what?
He reminds me of Cooper Flagg because he's his own dude. And I always laugh at him for years. Oh, he's going to be the next fill in the blank.
Right.
No, he's not. He's going to be the next Cooper Flagg because he's got an old school game, which I love because it kind of reminds me of when college basketball was awesome back in the 80s and the 90s because I'm that old.
Right.
He has an old school game to him. He's one of those guys that, hey, you need 35 tonight? I can give you 35. But you know what I can also do? I can give you 12 points, 8 rebounds, 11 assists, 6 steals. And I just love how comprehensive his game is, and he doesn't have to take 1,000 shots to score a ton of points. So he's his own dude. The fact he's only 18, if he can stay relatively healthy, just how good is he going to be when he's 23? I can't wait to see. But, again, in the meantime, as a ACC fan, we'll enjoy him for at least another week, hopefully another 2 weeks.
Yeah, and he said as long as Tyrese Proctor is hot, I'll keep giving him the ball.
Right.
Dude, Tyrese Proctor is shooting 63% from three his last 3 games. 63%. Dude shot 64% from the floor in the win. Baylor's good. Baylor's not a joke. That game might have been a joke, the way Duke produced offensively. We'll let Mark Packer go here. I appreciate your time, sir. We will talk again soon. The ACC will be back. I agree with you.
Adam, appreciate it as always, man. Take care and keep up the great work.